This is JD and Christina here at the Black Robe Regiment Conference in Orlando, Florida once again, and our next guest, incredible guy, Mr. Jeffery Younger, who has been fighting for 6 years?
6 years straight.
6 years to protect his son, Jeffery. James, I'm sorry, you're Jeffrey and James, from castration and the efforts of the ex-wife. So we listened to a rousing message and wanted to bring him on. Thank you for coming on the Sir Commander Radio Show.
Oh, thanks for having me. I'm glad to be here.
Well, go ahead and tell your story. We've got 10, 15 minutes, but it's very inspiring to know that you are doing everything for your kids.
Yeah.
You can possibly do.
I mean, look, I'm just a dad, right? That's what dads do, right? It's like, you can't abandon your child. I mean, give me a break. I really appreciate it when people thank me, but I'm also very uncomfortable.
Sure.
Because I'm just being a normal dad. I'm just a dad.
You're being a parent.
I'm just, I mean, it's nothing special I'm doing.
Right.
But here's how it all started. So I first started noticing it when my son was 2 years old. And my ex-wife would put him into timeouts and say the monsters only eat boys.
That's so.
The monster only eats boys.
That is so.
It's
crazy.
very strange.
Very strange.
And of course, that would raise your your interest. And then when she filed for divorce and forced me out of the house, she immediately began to cross-dress my son just right at 3 years old.
Right.
And if you go out onto YouTube, you can search for "Mommy Says I'm a Girl."
Okay.
And there's a video there that the first time he told me what she was doing to him, I whipped out my iPhone. It took me a long time because I'd never taken an iPhone video.
Sure.
It's my first video ever. And I said, "Why do you think you're a girl?" And he says, "Well, Mommy says I'm a girl."
Mommy says so.
Yeah. And I said, "Well, what else does Mommy do?" Well, it turns out she was cross-dressing him. She was giving him wigs to wear and encouraging what I can only say is inappropriate, sexuality in a child.
Sure.
I found out later she had exposed him to gay pornography. That she had started to read transgender books to him and expose him to. In fact, even the custody evaluator said that she had gone overboard pushing transgender ideology.
Wow.
Even the guy that really wrote a report against me.
Yeah, that's bizarre.
So eventually, the last straw for me was when she enrolled him in school as a girl, and the school district took her side to the point where even when I would bring my son to school in boys' clothes, they would give James a dress.
The school did that.
The teacher specifically, And the thing about my case that I think has caused the left to have so much interest in it is my son only presents as a girl when he's with his mom. With me, he presents as a boy.
Yeah, now I've heard you talk about that is not the definition of gender dysphoria.
No.
Because there has to be a consistency level here.
Correct.
And he's not showing that.
He's not showing that. And what's happened is the courts, the counselors, the doctors have all privileged his abnormal gender expression.
Wow.
And the reason for that is the professional bodies, the American Academy of Pediatrics, the American Psychological Association, even the Endocrine Society, have all, the American Medical Association, they've all come down and said doctors cannot help children identify with their biological sex if they present as a gender different with their biological sex. They consider that reparative therapy.
Okay.
The only thing they can help a child do is identify with a gender identity different than their biological sex. And so the court-appointed counselors started teaching my son that he's a girl. They affirmed that he was a girl, used female pronouns, uses fake girl's name without my consent.
Yeah.
And when I denied consent for that, they took me back to court. So I've had a huge trial, cost me close to $1 million. Had a huge trial. We had the top transgender experts in the world on both sides of the issue.
Yeah, right.
The expert that I trained up on my case wound up being the expert that went to the United Kingdom and outlawed the procedure. He was the key expert witness in the trial that outlawed sex change surgeries for kids in the UK. That was a witness that I paid to train up, and I told him, I'm going to pay you all this money.
And that's recent.
But I expect you to go out there and save some kids, and he's doing it.
Isn't that a form of brainwashing?
Yes, absolutely.
I mean, complete cut and dry.
Complete cut and dry, yeah.
Right.
And brainwashing is the right word for it.
That's what I was,
And because you have young impressionable children
Yeah.
who are not sure about who they are, what their sexuality is, and they're taking cues from adults about how to behave, right?
Right.
So you're telling these young boys like my son,
Yeah.
they're saying, hey, you should put on dresses. You should act like a female. But here's the problem for my ex-wife. Unfortunately for her, my son is a highly talented boxer.
Wow.
They want to put him in front of an Olympic talent scout. He's that good.
Wow.
My goodness.
There's a lot of resistance from the Olympic side
Yeah,
because
right.
they're like, well, we don't know if he can box as a boy because we don't know what his mom's going to do.
Oh my
So I haven't been able to advance his boxing skills. But I mean, to the point where we were looking at private tutors and boxing every day, like really grooming him up to be an Olympic boxer.
Wow.
He's also very skilled at wrestling and jiu-jitsu. He loves hiking, and he's if anything he's hyper masculine,
Right.
right? If anything he's hyper masculine.
Yeah.
But he's really afraid of his mom, and I also think that there's an element of fun make believe.
Yeah.
She makes it into kind of a fantasy make believe, so she'll show him like that the Frozen, that cartoon Frozen.
Yeah.
And they can pretend like he's one of the female protagonists in Frozen.
Sure.
She does that to entice him to cross-dress.
Wow.
Wow. It's almost like he's a superhero.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. You fought with litigation, and you've been constantly in litigation, I think.
Right.
Nonstop. There's never been a time when I haven't been under temporary orders and discovery rules.
Wow.
In 6 years.
6 years.
Yeah.
Where does your faith lie in all of this?
So I'm an Orthodox Christian.
Okay.
For your listeners who may not know, we're basically Catholic without the Pope.
Okay.
The Roman Catholic Church actually broke off from us.
Yes.
We didn't break off from them. They changed their doctrine,
Yeah.
which is changing the doctrine, and of course is why you had to have the Reformation. Right?
Sure.
So, but we're Catholic. We have the 7 sacraments like they do, but we don't have an infallibility doctrine or anything like that. We're very Bible based.
Right.
In fact, we don't even allow priests in church to decide what to read. We have a reading schedule. They have to read the entire Bible every year. Every church calendar year,
Right.
the whole Bible is read, even the verses they don't like.
Sure.
And that prevents them from building theologies around one sentence and so forth. So one of the problems I had is I was in the Greek Orthodox Church. So we see Greek Orthodox, Russian Orthodox, Serbian
Sure.
Orthodox.
Absolutely.
All that means
Right.
is the language that's used. And there are cultural traditions like Greece,
Right.
they don't have Christmas trees, so at Christmas they have a certain flower.
Yeah.
It's cultural traditions like that.
Sure.
But all Orthodox churches are the same, they're just Orthodox.
Right.
When this happened to my child, my priest, his name is Father Caitlin Basila in Euless, Texas, at St. John the Baptist Greek Orthodox Church,
Okay.
allowed my son onto church property in a dress.
The priest, let's slow down.
Oh,
the priest is
my
named
goodness.
Vasila.
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 Caitlin Vasila. Okay.
And I name names.
Yeah.
So he allowed my son onto church grounds in a dress, allowed them to put my son at the Greek festival on stage and dance as a girl in a dress. And this is strictly against church canon law.
Right.
Right.
When I approached him and said, "Do you see what's happening? You have to stop this," he said, "What can I do?" and walked away from me.
Wow.
And eventually that church said that I was too angry about what was happening to my son, and they had a police officer follow me around in church every time I went and basically chased me out of the church. So now I go to Antiochian church.
Okay.
So remember the letters to Antioch and the church?
Yes.
Right.
So that whole, we call that a C. Anywhere where the apostles founded the church,
Sure.
we call those a C. That church still exists to this day.
Right.
And I'm in the church that was out of that Holy See, founded by Paul. So,
Wow.
so
And you don't have a liberal priest.
no, the Antiochian church, it makes no bones about it that you will be excommunicated immediately.
Are you able to share any of this with children and even younger folk, and how do they respond to any of this?
Well, excuse me.
That's right.
All right.
So, the problem that we're having is with young people is they're not taking their cues from the churches anymore.
That's what I thought. That's what I thought.
So, I think in the Reformed Church, in the Protestant world, this is called formation, Christian formation, I think you call it.
It is called that, yes.
We call it catechesis, the
Right.
old Greek word. It's the same meaning.
Right.
It means instruction.
Sure.
Right? Here's the fundamental thing that the Greek Orthodox Church commissioned a study about this,
Okay.
about formation, or what we call catechesis. And they judge the success of catechesis or formation by whether children continue to attend church after they left the home.
Oh, wow. Isn't that something?
So they did a 10-year study on this, following children when they graduated high school, went to college, and then after college. They found exactly one thing that correlates with church attendance for children when they leave the home.
What's that?
Whether the father attends church with the children.
There
Makes
you
sense.
go. There's the response.
Even when the mother took the children to church, it had no effect.
Yes.
And there was no difference when the father and the mother took it. It was the same as if the father only took it.
Wow.
Jesse Lee Peterson, Pastor Peterson,
There it
he's
is,
here
of the
speaking
fathers.
with one of our guests earlier.
Yeah.
That's such a strong theme.
Yeah, it is.
But you are upholding fatherhood with enormous pressure.
Listen,
the weight of the ages is on you right now.
I haven't
but
even-
you're making it.
Oh, I'm never backing down.
And my gosh, the
What are they gonna
incredible
do?
success you had in UK.
yeah,
I mean that's made news.
Yes.
Even in the
Yeah.
last
yes.
few months.
And you know, you don't think about in the modern world, it seems like we've forgotten
Yes.
the role of courage and how
Yes.
few people it takes
Yeah.
to make things happen. You know, just to tell you some of the challenges I've had. So I've had courts actually say, I can't teach my son that he's a boy. That I can't teach my son traditional Christian teachings on sexuality and gender. I mean, I've actually been under temporary orders where this is outlawed.
Wow.
Okay? So it's been intense. It's been Soviet level intense.
Yeah, it sounds like the
Interference.
Gestapo kind of that's going on. here
But
with
you know,
this.
I've been asked by judges and lawyers. They ask me questions like, "Are you really going to go against the experts and teach your son that he's a boy?" And I just go, "Well, of course not."
I'm the dad.
Like, I don't know. It's as though we've lost our minds.
They have.
Yeah, that's it.
And so, you know, I've just consistently said, I'm standing up for the traditional way we've always raised children, and I have a right to do that, and I'm going to exercise those rights. No court or expert has the right to take that away from me. And they just have never heard that before.
You have 6,000 years of human history.
Yeah.
Right?
They've got
Backing
political
you,
correctness.
supporting you in this.
And the Kinsey Institute. That's basically
That's
all they've
basically
got.
it. That's basically it.
Yeah.
And you know, psychology is also a big problem that we face.
Huge. Oh gosh, yeah.
Excuse me. I'm
Yeah.
having a bit of an allergy attack. So if you Google crisis of replication in psychology, you'll find a number of peer-reviewed websites run by the top education institutions in America. Because depending on who you consult and how you judge it,
Yeah.
between 30 and 50% of their studies don't replicate.
Wow.
Well, astrology replicates more than that. Okay?
Astrology.
In real sciences, you know, like physics
Yeah.
and chemistry,
Yeah.
Experiments have to replicate in the 90% range before they're considered. It needs to be 99% before they're considered true.
Right?
Yeah.
Okay?
That's it.
So virtually none of psychology is
junk-
scientifically legitimate.
junk science.
It's junk science.
Like climate
That's
junk
right.
science.
Yeah.
And some of the COVID junk science.
Correct.
Oh my gosh. We need people to help you and learn more about your
Yeah.
incredible
How we
crusade
can
to
touch.
protect your son.
Yes.
We just have a little bit of time.
Okay.
But how can our listeners support you? Is there a Facebook? Is there a website? How
Yeah.
can they do it?
So the courts are always shutting down everything I do. So there's a network of volunteers that
Okay.
run a Facebook page. So you
Okay.
just go onto Facebook, search for Save James.
Save James.
You'll see that it has depending on who it is that looks at it, it'll say between 50 and 150,000 people like it. We know that it's well over 250,000 from email campaigns. The admins that run it have done all kinds of statistics. So Facebook tamps down the reach quite a bit. But it covers this issue globally, not just my case.
Wow. Wow.
And other fathers like Rob Hoogland in Canada,
Right.
who was in prison just for speaking out and saying, this counselor transitioned my daughter without telling me.
Right.
Sterilized my daughter without
Yeah.
telling me.
Ah.
He was in prison simply for telling that. Okay.
Right.
My friend Brent Netz up in Minnesota, whose son has already been transitioned, is on puberty blockers, and he can't find a counselor because they can't do reparative therapy. So you'll find out about all these things that are going on at that page. At the very top, there's a donation link, and that just all goes to my legal expenses and incidental childcare expenses.
And we're talking 6 and 7 figures.
Oh yeah, this is $1 million fight.
Oh gosh.
Yeah, it is, and that's where prayer is so huge. And for your family, and how about the other brother?
So Jude, it's interesting. Jude's struggle is when is it appropriate to lie? And more largely, the implication of that is when is it appropriate to break the commandments?
Wow.
And because, like we were out rabbit hunting, we were all dirty, we were getting in the shower, and he just points at James's groin and says, well, he's not a girl. Why does she keep calling him a girl?
Right.
And at that
2
time,
+ 2 = 4.
Yeah, at that time, they had already threatened with taking both my kids away from me if I did anything to convince James. So I said, what do I do with you every night? I read the Bible up to the creation of man and woman.
Yes.
What does that tell you, Jude?
Yeah.
And he said, he's a boy. I'm like, I know. So his thing is, I have to lie at my mom's house about whether he's a boy. Are there other commandments that I'm supposed to break?
Wow.
It's had a terrible moral effect on him. He's a very, and just to tell you the difference between my 2 kids, this is interesting. I noticed this when they were very young, just turned 2. I don't understand the modern cartoons.
I know.
Yeah, I don't even know what's going on. I can't even understand them. So I got the old 1960s cartoons. So I got Johnny Quest. They have real guns and stuff like boys that actually do. They actually go do stuff. Right. And there's this one thing where a monster was chasing this bandit, the dog, and James is saying, "Bandit's running. He's super fast. He's going to get away." And Jude said, "Bandit's afraid," and Johnny's worried about Bandit. So Jude was living the inner life for the characters, and James was living the outer life.
There you go.
And that's how God showed them the world.
Isn't that something?
So for Jude, this is a very serious, intense, deep struggle.
Yes, it is.
Because because he lives the inner life, he doesn't think, what will God do to me? He says, will God love me? Will God approve of me if I break the commandments? And so it's a very serious struggle that he goes through.
Wow.
So glad you gave time for us here at the Commandos show.
Yes.
At the Black Robe Regiment Conference in Orlando.
Yes.
Incredible conference. And we just want to say God bless you.
Thank you.
We urge our viewers and our churches to keep you in prayer and support you and your effort. And we have an upside down, crazy world.
We do.
Yeah.
And
we
it's
want
not
to thank
stopping.
you for the courage. You talk about courage. Folks listening to this, hearing this is real courage.
And folks, it's not hard.
Right.
Yeah.
Pray
There you go. Yes.
and do.
There it is.
Pray and do.
That's right.
It's that simple.
That's it.
God bless you.
Thank you.
Oh,
Thanks so much for coming on the show.
Thank you.
God bless you. Thank you.